Hare Krishna. Welcome to this presentation, which is a part of your Bhakti Yoga Summit organized by Prem Kishore Prabhu. I want to welcome you to this presentation and thank you for attending. I would also like to thank Prem Kishore Prabhu for arranging this wonderful summit as well as inviting me to participate. I feel honored to be a part of this summit and feel privileged to be able to give you this presentation. The topic is managing relationships. If you would give me a second, I'm going to share the screen so you can see the PowerPoint slides as we move along with the presentation. 1 second, please. Hare Krishna. So as I said, the topic is managing relationships. So before I move on, I'm going to talk about the definition of relationship itself. Relationship is defined as the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected. And as you can imagine, some connections are part-time, some are permanent, casual, or long-term, as we say in terms of relationships. Like the connections, relationships can be, or I should say connections can be frequent or infrequent. So relationship is the same way. But the thing about relationship is that now we're talking about connection of people to other people. And what we should remember is that us human beings, we are social by nature. Sometimes we are called social animals. And basically people need people. The biggest punishment in a jail can be to put somebody in a solitary confinement. Lonely people are depressed, and loneliness is the biggest cause of suicide in the world today. Therefore, maintaining good relationships is critical to our own survival. Yeah, you can say that some loners have been successful, and that is true, but I think that's more of an exception than the rule. Relationships are very important. It is perhaps the greatest need in the world today to educate people on how to live in a loving relationship with each other. If we can learn that, we will be happy more than we would be if we had lots of money, but no one to love or to be loved by. It is natural for us to feel better if we have someone we are able to share our secrets with, our inner feelings with, and ask them for guidance and actually receive. As I said, money does not necessarily buy long-term happiness. But loving relationships give real joy, the joy that we feel inside as opposed to something glittering like a party or something like that. Not only that, when we are trying to establish our relationship with Lord Krishna through our devotional service, we should remember that Krishna receives our service not directly, but through our Guru or through other Vaishnavas, but according to our relationship with those Vaishnavas or with the Guru. Frankly, we can have philosophy, we can know the philosophy very well, we can do our sadhana very well, but without good Vaishnava relationships, we will not attract the mercy of Lord Krishna or the mercy of our Guru for that matter. His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami said, and I quote, "The Supreme Lord is very much pleased when he sees we are united in our service to him." There's a story in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam which describes 10 brothers, collectively known as Prachetas. Upon advice and guidance from Lord Shiva, they performed austerities underwater for 10,000 years, meditating upon Lord Vishnu. At the end of 10,000 years, Lord Vishnu appeared. And the first thing he said was that, "My dears, I very much appreciate the feeling of cooperation that you have shown to each other." So Lord Vishnu was not appreciating the fact that they stayed underwater for 10,000 years. They meditated upon him. But he appreciated the fact that they had great relationship with each other. So that's the important thing. Even Lord Chaitanya emphasized service to Vaishnavas in a loving relationship. He said that's the most important thing to make progress in our devotional service. And we all know, we have probably experienced it, that in any group, in any organization, people leave because of poor relationship with other people, and they stay because of good relationships. So basically, people stay if they feel they are cared for by other people, and they leave if they feel uncared for. So once again, relationships become very important. As I was talking about connections, I was mentioning there can be different types of connections. So same way, the different types of relationships. The casual or short-term relationships. Because what happens is we come into contact with a lot of people, but not all contacts are long-term. We have contacts with people on the street, people in the hallway, people in stores, etc., etc., and they are infrequent. They are, transactional basically. Or some people we see fairly often, frequently, but it's limited to, "Hey, Hare Krishna, Hari Bol, how are you?" And actually 80% of our relationships are like that. Then of course there are long-term relationships, which can be mandatory or optional, and we'll talk about that. They can be formal or informal or close. They can be material or spiritual. But for whatever reason, they're there for the long term. And about 20% of our relationships fall in that category. But the thing to remember is that to have good relationships, we should invest 80% of our efforts into those 20% long-term relationships. So let's talk about those relationships. So we have basically 4 different types of relationships. We have relationship at home with our mom, our dad, our siblings. And it's basically mandatory. We didn't choose our parents. We didn't choose our siblings. We didn't choose our other relatives. That relationship exists because of familiarity. Of course, it can be spiritual or it can be material, depending upon the environment in the house. Or the work relationship. It's optional in the sense that we can join a company or a group, or we can leave the company or a group. Even when we are in the group or in the company, there's a bunch of people we have nothing to do with, so there is no relationship. Or I should say optional relationship. But there is a group of people we work with, it's there, it's mandatory because we have to work with them. But once again, it's optional because we can leave. On the lower right-hand corner, we show others. So it's doctors, nurses, police, store clerks, all these people, we have infrequent relationships with them, again, based on some transactions. And of course, it's always optional, it's casual, and almost always material platform. Then we come to the right lower corner, the community. Community of our neighbors, friends, mentor, mentees, devotees, etc. Obviously, depending upon whether it's the temple environment or outside, it can be spiritual or material. And of course, it's optional in that we choose who we wish to have a relationship with. But with some, it turns into nice long-term relationship. Now, relationships can be good and relationships can be poor. So let's see if we can talk about characteristics of the two types of relationships. And you will see that the characteristics are almost opposite from each other. In a good relationship, you have respect for each other. In a poor relationship, is lacking. In a good relationship, you have good communication with each other. In a poor relationship, there's almost no communication or bad communication. Actually, communication breakdown is perhaps the most prominent reason for breakup of relationships. Kindness is always present in a good relationship and is absent in other, and as a matter of fact, it's always become a power issue. I'm superior to you kind of thing. Courtesy, very important and shows up in good relationship, whereas it's abusive relationship in a poor situation. Warm. A good relationship is always has a lot of warmth. And I'm thinking about an example of taking some warm water and putting it on ice cube. An ice cube melts. Similarly, our warmth towards other people can melt the coldest of hearts. So typically in a good relationship, there's a lot of warmth among the people, members of the group. And of course, the trust is always there and the love is always there. And so with this good or bad relationship, it has effect on us. In a good relationship, we end up developing a strong self-esteem, whereas low self-esteem in a poor relationship. In a good relationship, we feel valued, we feel appreciated, and again, when people feel appreciated and valued, they stay in that relationship. So that's the good thing. We can be ourselves. There's no fear of the other people in that, nobody's judging us or nobody's going to tell us, to do something that we don't want to do, etc. And there's lots of laughter, which reminds me about smile. It's amazing how a smile works. A smile begets smile. A frown typically results in a frown. We feel good when others smile at us or smile back when we smile at them. A smile can start amazing relationships. A frown may break a relationship, but never starts a relationship. Nobody ever says, "Oh my God, you have such a beautiful frown on your face." It just doesn't happen. So clearly, it's better to have good relationships. But how do we go about developing good relationships? Let's talk about that. So once again, we'll talk about casual relationships and long-term relationships. So as I was saying, more often than not, simple smile and a good friendly eye contact or a wave of your hand like that is enough to start a casual relationship. But in a casual relationship, we should remember one thing. It is better if we acknowledge the other person first. Say Hare Krishna, Hari Bol, how are you first? I've lost count of the number of people who have complained to me that nobody speaks to them or people are ignoring him. And I always ask, Well, what did you do? Did you say Hare Krishna first? Did you say hello first? No. Well, then why do you expect other people to do that? And generally speaking, that if we say hello, Hare Krishna first, people will respond. Some people may not, but that's rare. So it's very important that to build or to start a relationship, that we learn to acknowledge them, to say hello to them first without waiting for them to be acknowledged by them first. Another thing is, if we look excited when somebody's sharing good news about themselves, then again, the person feels good and a relationship starts. On the other hand, if you look bored or have an expression that says, "Why are you telling me?" or we look unhappy to hear somebody's good news, then that's not a good way to start a relationship, casual or not. Also, remember the degree to which people like us is directly proportional to how much they like themselves in our company. So it's always about liking themselves, and it's whether we are making them feel good or not is what determines the relationship. So how we make them feel about themselves in our company is the key to develop a relationship. As somebody said, it is not what we say that people remember, but how we make them feel is what they remember. I'm also reminded of Mother Teresa. She said that when we look at the world with positive eyes, we fall in love with the world. But when we deal with the world with a positive tongue, the whole world falls in love with us. So, very important how we speak, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Building long term relationships. First key is to treat people as we would like them to treat us. So, therefore, we should be thoughtful and considerate of the feelings, of situation, and circumstances of other people and treat them accordingly. If we want to be treated with respect, with affection, then we have to do the same thing. And then it gets reciprocated. We should try to understand other person's side. That's called empathy. We need to learn to see things from the other person's perspective and understand their situation and respond correspondingly, act correspondingly. I'll tell you a little story about that. There was an American, he married an Italian girl. And within 2 years, they were going to divorce. So the judge asked the man, why do you wish to divorce your wife? And he said, my lord, whenever we have breakfast, she serves me the edges of the bread loaf. I mean, edges, can you imagine, my lord? We throw them away. And she's feeding me what we throw them away. And again, every day she keeps doing this. When his wife heard that, she screamed. She said, oh my God, do you not understand? I'm from Italy. In Italy, it is considered a sign of respect and affection to offer the other person the edges of the bread loaf and eat the middle part yourself. So it is out of my love and affection and respect for you that I have been doing this. There have been so many times I've so badly wanted to take the edges for myself, but I did not do that out of my respect and love for you. And suddenly the other shoe dropped, and the man understood that he never tried to see things from his wife's perspective. I'm sure you can think of many examples where something like that has happened. Other thing is that we have to speak carefully. And I've been saying this throughout this presentation. Think of the ways others will feel when they hear what you have to say. It's all about making other people feel good about themselves. There's a saying in Sanskrit that says Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat, which says, yeah, speak the truth, but speak in a very palatable way. You don't have to hurt people's feelings when you say something. Serve with humility, integrity, and love. When we serve other people with no expectation of return, when we're not looking for a favor back, and when people see us serving them again and again with humility, integrity, and love, then they start to appreciate it. They may not say anything, but when they see you consistently doing that, they develop positive feelings for you, and the relationship improves. We live in a world where we are trained to think about ourselves. We're trained to put ourselves in the center. We are number one is the message that's always given. So we get used to keeping us in the center and everything revolving around us. But just imagine, when everybody does that, it's not the recipe for a good relationship. So we should learn to put the other person in the center, at least sometimes. Sometimes let's make it about other person. And when we do that, people understand that you care. And believe it, people care that you care. And when they see that you care, they start caring themselves for you, and a good long-term relationship develops. Let's keep going. Listening to other people, attentive listening, tells the other person that you're interested in them, in their affairs, in their situation. And once again, going back to caring, they feel that you care, you're interested, they care, and they become interested. As a matter of fact, sorry, just going back to the previous point, it is said, listen in a way that people love to talk to you. And the corollary, of course, is speak in a way that people love to listen to you. So they both go together. Helping others. I'll tell you one thing. When we are with somebody, when they're having a good time, when things are going well, they're in a happy occasion, they may or may not remember your presence. But see, if you're there with them, shoulder to shoulder, holding their hand, lending them a hand, in their bad times, when they're having difficult times, they will always remember that you were there. You were there for them. They'll never forget that. And again, it's a very good long-term relationship. I don't have to say being friendly. Of course, people like to see people who are pleasant to deal with, who smile on their face, pleasant demeanor all the time. Nobody likes to be with the complainers, fighters, people who argue all the time. Nobody likes to do that. Have a sense of humor. It is so important to have a sense of humor. It will allow us to see the light side of a situation when things are not going as well as we want. It also lightens the mood. It increases our ability to think positively, to think rationally when we are in a better mood. And therefore, it becomes easier actually to solve the problem, and certainly reduces the amount of upset we're feeling because of whatever. Finally, a strong sadhana. When we are strong in our devotional practices, we are firm and determined, then we develop a strong relationship with Krishna himself. And as you know, Krishna is the root of everything. There's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam which says, when we water the root of a tree, the entire tree, including its branches, twigs, and leaves, are nourished. When we put food in our stomach, then all our limbs are nourished and strengthened. Similarly, because Krishna is the root of everyone, when we have a strong, good relationship with Krishna, then automatically our relationship with other people is improved. We end up with good, positive relationship with everybody that we deal with. A couple other points about building long-term relationships is about respect. We all want respect. We all want to be given respect. But the best way to earn others' respect is to give them respect. It's one of those things that almost always is reciprocated. So giving respect earns respect. We cannot demand respect. It has to be earned. And the best way is to give respect. It's one of those social skills. And I'll tell you, in today's environment, most companies, they're looking for social skills in a new hire more than technical skills. The feeling is that you can teach this new hire technical skills. But social skills are difficult to teach, and therefore they prefer to have the person already have them. Another very small point about social skills is to honor personal space. Everybody has a personal space, whether that's the physical space, like how close physically you can stand with them, or it's the amount of time, or it's the privacy, or whatever. Everybody has a definition of their personal space. We need to understand what that is, and we must honor that to maintain and build good relationships. And the final point in that is gratitude. We need to feel gratitude for people who, in some way or the other, are helping us, have helped us, or have helped us. In that regard, I want to tell you the story about a US Navy pilot, fighter pilot, whose name was Charles Plum. He fought 75 combat missions in the Vietnam War before his plane was hit by a surface-to-air missile. As it was going down, he ejected, but he landed in the enemy territory. He was captured and imprisoned for 6 years before he came back. One day, he was sitting in a restaurant somewhere, whatever town in America he was living in, and a man came to him and he said, "Are you Charles Plum?" He said, "Yes, I am." "Who are you?" And this man gave his name and said, "I am the guy who packed your parachute that day when you were hit." And they had some pleasant conversation. The man left. Charles Plum came home and started thinking about that man who somewhere in the bowels of the ship was busy day and night packing parachutes. If he had not done a good job, Charles Plum will not be alive today. So similarly, we have many people in our life who pack up parachutes. It could be a physical parachute. It could be a spiritual parachute. It could be a moral parachute or any other kind of parachute that we need when we are going through difficult times. Even when we're not going through difficult times, just getting us ready is done by many people in our lives. They could be our teachers, it could be our parents, it could be our friends, it could be our neighbors. It doesn't matter. The point is we should recognize people who packed our parachute. We should thank them. We should appreciate them. We should let them know that we appreciate what they've done for us. We recognize what they've done for us and that we are grateful. It goes a long way in establishing a long-term relationship. Okay, but I want to talk about relationships itself. And the thing about relationships are that they're easy to establish and they're even easier to break, but they're very hard to maintain. Those of you who may not be familiar with these three personalities, this is Lord Brahma. He was given the responsibility to create, in other words, to establish relationships. This is Lord Shiva who was given the responsibility to destroy, in other words, to end the relationships. But Lord Vishnu said that maintenance of the universe is the hardest thing to do. So therefore he said, I'll keep that responsibility myself and I'll delegate the establishing and the breaking of relationships to these two exalted personalities, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. So how are the relationships are so easy to establish? Well, just a little bit of sincerity, a little bit of showing to other people that we care for them establishes it. Giving appropriate gifts. There's a verse in a book called Nectar of Instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami, which talks about the 6 principles of good, loving relationships. And giving and receiving appropriate gifts are 2 of them. Other 4 are sharing your mind, asking confidential questions, feeding prasadam, and eating prasadam. Those 6 things establish relationships, and they're all easy to do. A very effective way to establish relationships is to give our time and energy and our advice to people who need it. Sure, sometimes that's a sacrifice by us. Sometimes it's austerity by us. But I will tell you, people never forget when they see somebody going out of his or her way to give their time, their energy, and their guidance. So these people can solve their problem, they can get over the hump. They never forget, and it becomes a very long-term, wonderful relationship. I keep talking about this. A smile is the most inexpensive thing, but it gives the best return on investment. To smile at somebody doesn't take anything. But as I said before, it always begets a smile. And that's how the relationships start. Showing appreciation is another one. When we appreciate something people have done for us, then we show the gratitude through this appreciation. People appreciate our appreciation and the relationship established. But people don't like people who criticize them or find faults in them. So therefore, to establish a relationship, we need to be able to avoid fault-finding tendencies. People just don't appreciate it. Then you will find that sometimes relationships are tested and they're under stress. And when that happens, we should try to mend the relationship rather than break it. We should try to settle things amicably and, if required, correct ourselves. Let's face it, everyone has some weaknesses, some deficiencies. There's no shame in that. And it's better to just correct that deficiency, that weakness, and mend the relationship than breaking it. And if that means we have to apologize for a mistake, then do that. It's not a big deal. Don't make it a big deal. And as I said, relationships are even easier to break. And the simplest way is to just simply stop smiling at people. People will get the message and they'll go away. Don't acknowledge them back. They say Hare Krishna, Hari Bol, and turn your face. They'll go away. Or, opposite of what I was just talking about, start finding faults in them. Even when they have done well, don't appreciate what they did well. Just talk about how this could have been better or what they did not do. I remember many, many years ago, I had a manager who was very good at finding faults. So during performance review sessions, we'll sit down and I may have done 99 good things, great things for that matter. And maybe one thing that was not too much disliking. And the entire session, he only talked about that one thing. You did this wrong, this wrong, you should have done this, you should have done that. Well, as a result, my relationship with that manager was never good. And neither was his relationship with anybody else in the group because he was doing the same thing with everybody. not appreciating somebody, what they have done for us. And going back to Charles Plum's story, when we show gratitude, it builds relationship. When we stop appreciating and become ungrateful for what other people have done for us, that's a recipe for breaking relationships. Another very easy way to break relationships is to break somebody's trust, break somebody's confidence in you. And I'll tell you, once the trust is broken, even if due to circumstances or whatever, the relationship is reestablished, it will never be the same. We'll never have their trust. My mother used to tell me a phrase about a rope. If we cut the rope and then tie it back together, the two pieces, even though you still have a rope, but that knot will always be there. That knot in the relationship will never go away if you break somebody's trust. And finally, and this is, I'm saying it very light, in a light way, because many years ago when my daughter got married, I have a very large social circle. So I put my limit to 750 people, that I will not invite more than that in my daughter's wedding. And as a result, some people were not invited. And even today, after many, many years, they're mad at me because I did not invite them. So again, please take it lightly, but if you want to break somebody's relationship with somebody, just don't invite them to your daughter's wedding. Finally, relationships are very hard to maintain. In a perfect world, it would be easy because everything will manage itself. In a perfect organization, people understand what they have to do. They're competent people. They understand the common goal. They understand the common purpose of the organization, and they do it. And everybody's working towards that common goal. But we live in an imperfect world. In an imperfect world where everything and everyone, including expectations and relationships, have to be managed to get the desired results. We have to keep working with these people. Make sure they understand what they're supposed to do, what I'm desiring, and helping them move along the same lines. So we have to invest in maintaining relationships in an imperfect world. It's not a one-time thing. It has to be done continuously. Second point is, if we start seeing the world through Krishna's eyes, then the relationships become easy to maintain. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at Krishna's perspective on things. He is very forgiving. He is very tolerant of our mistakes. He does not judge us by our actions. Rather, he judges us by our intentions. But we do exactly the opposite. We judge people by their actions. We're not all that tolerant or forgiving. Let me give you an example. We go to a temple, and believe it or not, all of us make many offenses to the Lord. We go to the temple because the Lord allows us to go to the temple. So he gives permission. When we go there and make these mistakes again and again and again, he does not withdraw that permission, that mercy to allow us to come to the temple. But he says, it's okay. It's all right, come back. You can make the same mistake again. Come back. Keep doing it until you learn. To compare that with this corporate world, if we make that many mistakes repeatedly, we will be fired from our jobs within 30 minutes of starting. So if we start seeing the world through Krishna's eyes, then relationships are more easily maintained. Other thing is, we should develop and manifest Vaishnava qualities. Vaishnava qualities of mercy, honesty, compassion, those kind of things. Being straightforward, loving everybody. They are Vaishnava qualities. We should develop and manifest those qualities to maintain the relationships. And of course, observe Vaishnava etiquette. Vaishnava etiquette of respecting everyone without expecting to be respected in return. But as I said earlier, if we respect other people, automatically they will respect us. So it's not a lose-lose game by any means. It's a win-win game. Finally, the relationships are maintained well if we understand the love language of other people. And let me explain what that means. Excuse me. Everyone, all of us, have a love language. There are 5 love languages defined. The first one is called words of affirmation. And that's basically expressing affection through spoken words, expressing praise through spoken words, and our feelings of love, etc. But basically, these people want to hear it with their ears that you love them, that you appreciate them, that they want to hear the praise for what they have done. The second type of people, their love language is acts of service. They don't care for the words. They want action. Show them that you love by some service you do for them, something you do for them. Then they know that, yes, the love is there, the affection is there. The third type, they prefer gifts. So give them a gift, an appropriate gift, obviously, rather than words of affirmation or any kind of service. Give them gifts, they're happy, and they know that that's your expression of love and affection for them. On the other hand, some people just want quality time. Spend quality time with me. Talk heart to heart. Let's understand each other better. On and on. They just simply want that. And that's their way of expressing affection with undivided and undistracted attention. Finally, there are people who appreciate physical touch. Touch them in the arm or hand. But of course, you have to be very careful, especially when dealing with a person of opposite gender, because it can be misunderstood. And if it's misunderstood, it can actually do more harm than good. But if we understand the love languages of different people in our group, then we can have very good relationships over the long term. Unfortunately, today, most people are in a poor relationships. Whether they're devotees or non-devotees, doesn't matter. Most of the time, if not all the time, at least some of us are in a poor relationship of some kind. Countries are at war, communities are at war, different races are at war. There's always some demonstration, something bad is happening, all because of individual or group relationships. And when that happens, then people become unhappy. Let's face it, poor relationships are no fun. They make us unhappy and they feel us living empty inside. And when that happens, we sometimes even stop the extra distance we could otherwise go to mend the relationship. As a result, we experience divorces, arguments, separations, etc. The divorce rate in the Western countries is more than 50%, and it's increasing in India at a great speed. So it's happening, but it's not all that surprising given our imperfections. So what happens is this imperfection everywhere. We are imperfect people living in an imperfect world, in an imperfect age called Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. But not only that, we are imperfect, we're individuals, which means we have different taste, we have different requirements, we have different nature, we have different needs, our circumstances are different, And at least sometimes we are selfish, and at least sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. We expect others to judge us by our intentions, but we prefer to judge other people by our actions, as I mentioned before. This leads to imperfect expectations, which is we expect other people to be perfect, but we expect them to not expect us to be perfect. We have our ideas of perfect person, and when people don't meet that expectation, we tend to take the relationship to the negative side. And it all happens because you're all on a material platform. What that means is that on a material platform, that is, as opposed to a spiritual platform, Krishna is not in the center, which means we are self-centered, which means that we're thinking mostly about our own interest. What's in it for me? Why should I do this? And then when that happens, then things like honesty, integrity, morality, fairness, etc., are not our highest priority because the primary goal remains self-interest. And when that happens, everybody wants to be everybody's boss. We lack loyalty. We become superficial and shallow. And then it becomes, even in the temple environment, like what we call Haribol culture. You see somebody and say Haribol, and that's about it. Because you don't want to, or because of the relationship, you're not allowed to go any further than that. So what causes? What are some of the causes other than imperfection of these poor relationships? So we kind of touched upon them, but I'll just talk a little bit more detail about 4 reasons for poor relationships. First is selfishness. When the self-gratification is the goal of a life, then we become self-centered, as I said before. And when that happens, there's no mutual back scratching. There's no encouragement to others to succeed. There's no service move. And then basically then the feeling is, who cares if you're hurt as long as I win? And then what's of paramount importance is whether I'm meeting my goals. And when that happens, obviously, everybody's saying the same way, then we go different ways, or there are fights. There's envy, there's competition, there's quarrel, there's lack of trust. And all those things happen because of being self-centered. And of course, in a self-centered environment, if I don't need you anymore, then it's bye-bye. You're no use to me anymore, then bye-bye, regardless of what you have done for me in the past. And that's what ends up in shallow relationships, because only what's in it for me, what did you do for me today, etc., etc. Then the dealings become agenda driven and become impersonal. The personal aspect goes away. And it's all caused by false ego. False ego is basically our identification with the body, thinking we are this body, not this spirit soul. But if you can give up the false ego, then we'll find it easier to let the small stuff pass by, not sweat the small stuff. Let it go. Not every issue is a prestige issue. It's okay to be wrong. Admitting a mistake and saying sorry is actually a sign of high self-esteem and high self-confidence. It's okay to say I've made a mistake, that I'm sorry, I beg you for forgiveness. It just increases the likelihood of a better relationship. But when we don't do that, the relationship becomes or remains poor. Intolerance is another reason. Our selfishness and our insecurities lead to intolerance of other people. Let's face it, it is comfortable, or I should say more comfortable, to deal with people who are our type and whom we like and who support us and not challenge us. When we meet people who are different or who are challenging, then we don't like them, and then the relationship goes bad. Other thing we should understand is intolerance is contagious in any group. When one person is intolerant, then the whole group becomes intolerant. And sometimes of just one thing or of each other, which makes things even worse. And that environment is stifling, makes people unfriendly and unproductive. So in an organization, to do something productive becomes very difficult when people are intolerant. Of course, in many situations, intolerance may be illegal, unethical, or unvaishnava-like. Illegal as in racism, unethical as in fraud, unvaishnava-like as being conscious of the body color, etc., etc., looks, is all unacceptable. Krishna recommends tolerance. Tolerance is a Vaishnava quality. Lord Chaitanya said, we should be tolerant like a tree. We know that a tree gives fruits and shade to anyone who comes near without any kind of discrimination. Even when a tree is cut, it grows back and starts giving the fruits and the shade to anyone who comes near. Misunderstanding karma. So basically, karma is the reaction to our activities. And we accumulate karma in every human life. And whenever we are born, we're born with a subset of that karma as destiny for life. That destiny decides, who we're going to be, what is going to be our nature, etc. And that includes, getting miseries because of the karma that we have. But when we don't understand that concept, we start blaming somebody else for our miseries. I had a friend who said he likes to work in a group. He likes to work in committees. And I said, why? And with a straight face, he said, because then I can blame somebody else for the problems. And that's a very common tendency. When we don't understand that we have a quota of happiness, of miseries, of fame, popularity, etc., then we become envious of people who are more successful than us. We don't understand that they have a bigger quota of these things that we want. And so in order to compete with them, in order to become equal to them, sometimes we steal, sometimes we cheat or snatch or rob from other people so that we can increase the size of our quota. But we don't understand that that is simply not possible. Therefore, if we could learn to believe in what I've written here, excerpt from a verse in Ramcharitmanas. It's in Hindi, Jahi vidhi rakhe Ram, tahi vidhi rahiye, which means that we should learn to live in whatever condition, whatever situation, whatever circumstance the Lord has put us in, and accept whatever comes our way as His mercy. When we do that, then we can have better relationships with people. Finally, pride is a relationship breaker. People do not like to work with proud people. People who are puffed up have very difficult time having good relationships because people in general appreciate a genuinely humble person. Being humble doesn't mean you don't have the good qualities. Being humble simply means you're only competing with yourself. You're trying to become a better version of yourself rather than competing with other people. And people really appreciate that. Okay. So I'm done with the presentation, but I would like to leave you with two takeaways. One is, when you go home, please make a list of people with whom you have a good relationship and a list of people with whom you have a poor relationship. And then ask yourself a question. Why do I have good relationship with these people? And why do I have poor relationship with these people? What are their characteristics of these people that allows me to have good or poor relationship with them? And then ask yourself, what are your characteristics that you would like to improve upon to have better relationship with other people. So that's the first takeaway. Second takeaway is have 11 questions and ask yourself these questions. Do people like spending time with me? Are people happy to see me? When I walk into a room full of people, do they start looking different directions? Do they start looking unhappy? Or suddenly the room goes quiet? Or they're excited to see me. Everybody starts saying hello. And their faces start to shine, etc. Do people trust me? Do I respect other people's opinions and points of view? How hard is it for me to apologize to others? Do people put me down? Do I put others down? How many people can I count on to lend me a hand when I need their support? Similarly, how many people can count on me to support them in their hour of need? How many really close friends do I have? Do people automatically turn to me when they need advice? And how many people are eager to share their good or bad news with me before they tell anyone else? So if you wish, you can take a screenshot of this and the previous slide. I'll wait for a second. For those of you who may want to take a snapshot. And I want to thank you for allowing me to present this topic on managing relationships. I hope you can take advantage of that, and I hope I have given you information that's of use to you, of benefit to you. And in conclusion, I want to thank you, and I want to thank Prem Kishore Prabhu for giving me an opportunity to present to you today. Thank you. Hare Krishna.